Hi everyone. How's it going? Um, I've got a fun topic today. It's about what emotions do and don't tell you. I'm going to share a few examples about this along the way. And um, how's this going to be useful to you? Well, okay, you know by now, we're talking about living fully and abundantly despite pain or any other physical limitation. And what does that require? It requires decision making that empowers you and leads to a way of living that you want. And so we're making decisions all the time, every day, and in every moment. And here's what often happens those decisions get clouded by emotions. We make decisions based on how we're feeling. And feeling, I mean, that's not, I'm going to kind of caveat this to let you know that emotion is powerful. I've talked about that before, and use making sure that you're making decisions from a good emotion is great, right? It's not a bad thing to pay attention to emotion while you're making decisions. I guess what I'm offering here is that we want to understand emotion and understand what it is telling us and what it is not telling us. So how does it cloud us? Well, emotions cloud us if we disconnect from the source of information behind that emotion. Emotions are providing information, but we often misplace that. Um, we incorrectly conclude that emotions are providing us information that they aren't really providing. Um, we get kind of confused about what type of information our emotions are really providing us, and that's what clouds our ability to make decisions. And when we get clouded and we make a decision based on incorrect information, that can take us farther away from this abundant living despite being impacted by physical limitation. So, we're just going to talk briefly about what emotions do tell you and what they don't tell you, what information they provide you, and what information emotions don't provide you. All right, so I'm going to actually start with what they don't tell you. Here's what emotions do not tell you. And I summarize this into three things. Okay, so the first thing that emotions don't tell you is what is coming in the future, given the circumstance. Emotions do not tell you what's coming. And here's two examples of this at work. One is that I was talking to my son the other day about I was talking to my 9-year-old son about his 1-year-old brother. Um, his 1-year-old brother recently was sick and had some constriction in his airway. And we were all concerned. We took him to the emergency room, made sure that there wasn't anything lodged in his throat, and it turns out everything was fine. And but my 9-year-old son, as he was processing this, because he got afraid, he got really afraid of scared for our little baby. And um, what was also particularly relevant for my 9-year-old son is that he also has experienced a whole lot of airway restriction. He's had some reactive airway to viruses. And he was kind of reflecting about how when he has that restriction in his airway, he experiences fear. All right, so there's the emotion that we're going to talk about just for a moment. He experiences fear, And what he makes that fear mean is that he might have a very premature death. In fact, he might die like tomorrow. and um and we were talking about whether our baby, his 1-year old brother, experiences fear when he had that restricted airway. And honestly, I don't know for sure. But my 9-year old was saying he probably doesn't, Dad, because he doesn't even understand what death is. Like he can't comprehend what death is. And I'm like, oh, you have a pretty good point. Yeah. And then my son was like, once he understands death, once he gets old enough that he like learns about the idea and the concept of death and what that is, then when he experiences fear, he might actually start to worry that he's going to die. If his airway is being restricted in some way, he might worry that this fear means that he might die tomorrow, or and it was just really fascinating to talk about that. But one thing, I mean, that's one thing that was very clear. One thing that we talked about is my 9-year-old experiences this emotion, and this emotion, he gathered information from this emotion, this fear. Because this fear was present, he was like concerned that it meant something bad was going to happen. Um, the 1-year-old maybe didn't experience this emotion. And what I was pointing out to my son is that in both cases, nothing bad happened to either one of you. When you were experiencing fear, and when maybe our 1-year-old, was not experiencing fear, the future was the same. What does that tell us? That tells us that the emotion, the fact that you had emotion and the 1-year-old didn't, I guess, again, we don't know for sure if the 1-year-old did or did not. That's kind of beside the point. But assuming that the 1-year-old did not experience emotion, the emotion played no role in predicting what was going to happen. Another example of this is Election Day that we experienced recently in the US. And a lot of people feeling fear and worry and all kinds of emotion, sadness, even, right? There's like such a wide range of emotion. Others were experiencing some opposite emotion. I'm not going to talk so much about them because that doesn't demonstrate what I want to demonstrate. So what I want to demonstrate is the people who were experiencing negative emotion, what they were saying is like, oh my word. There's probably going to be some terrible things coming. Some dangerous things are going to happen, some things that are not good for me and my family or our country, and all these things. And when I bring this up, I'm not making any claim of what may or may not be coming with the outcome of the election. What I'm saying is that one person's emotion does not represent the truth of what is coming. Your own emotion about something is never predictive of the future. Okay? So that's item number 1. Emotions do not contain information about the future. Number 2, emotions do not contain information about what you can or cannot do. In other words, emotion doesn't tell you anything about your capability. An example of this is when, for many years, I would attempt to do a push-up and have so much pain in my hands and my wrists because of my rheumatoid arthritis that I'd get really discouraged. And from a place of discouragement, when I was experiencing discouragement, it felt so real and so factual that I will never be capable of doing a push-up. I will always have unbearable pain. I was making the physical pain and the emotion mean something about what I was capable of doing. And guess what? I was wrong. Why? Because emotions don't tell us what we're capable of. Pain doesn't tell us what we're capable of. 5 years later, I can do push ups all I want. I now comfortably bench press 200 pounds with sets of 5. So I'm doing like, what, 5 times the weight on my hands and wrists that I used to do. I used to do 5 times less of the weight and have pain and discouragement and believe that my body was not capable of such weight. Now I'm doing 5 times that weight and my body's perfectly capable. What does that tell us? It tells us that that emotion of discouragement and also that time where I was experiencing pain, that moment of pain, had zero information about my capability. Or at least my capability in the future. Actually, now that I think back on it, even my capability then. I was wrong about myself in that moment. I thought that because of my pain, I needed to stop doing push-ups. What I've learned over the years, and this is my unique situation, I don't know what it might be for you, but what I learned is that my pain was not a signal of danger, and that I could have taken on more weight. I could have kept going. I was capable of doing push-ups then, but I was so afraid. I was having this emotion. I was having fear. I was having discouragement. I was like, I am not capable of doing a push-up. I was wrong. All right. The third thing that emotions don't tell us is whether we are doing the right thing or on the right track. Emotions don't have that kind of information. Here, another example with my son. He wanted to do these tryouts for a basketball team. And he went to this tryout and he found that the other players were quite good, and he was concerned that he would not make the team because of the skill he saw in the other players. And after the tryout, he was sad. He was experiencing this negative emotion. And when he was in this negative emotion, he started saying, I never should have done this. I never should have tried out. In other words, he felt like he was on the wrong track, right? Or he did the wrong thing. Why was he feeling that? Because of the emotion he was in and what he was making that mean. Because he was feeling sad, maybe a little bit discouraged, he started to conclude incorrectly that he'd done the wrong thing. And how often do we do this? So often, right? When we're experiencing emotion, positive or negative, we often look to that emotion to determine whether we're doing the right thing or if we're on the right track. But emotion doesn't have that information. It does not tell us whether we're doing the right thing. Emotions just don't have that kind of intelligence. I've experienced this recently with some decisions I'm making related to my work. And I just the other day was getting coached by my coach. I was in some sadness, and we talked about what I was making that mean. And when you are experiencing the emotion, it just feels so real. It's like this emotion is so strong, and what I feel is so true in this moment is that what I am considering doing is not the right thing. And again, I was wrong. I was making emotion a source of information about whether I was on the right track. And the emotion just simply doesn't have that information. It doesn't tell you whether you're on the right track. How do you know? How do you know whether you're on the right track? I mean, who decides that? Does emotion? Emotion doesn't decide that. Okay, so let me move on now to talk about what emotions do tell us. What information does emotion have? It's only this. Emotions tell us what's happening in our brain. That's it. It tells us what thought we are thinking. Emotions are chemical reactions and vibrations that are coming from the firing of neurons in our brain. Sentences that we're thinking, that's what creates emotion. That's the only source of information behind an emotion or underlying an emotion. Emotion, remember, let's go back to the three things. Emotion does not tell us what's coming in the future. Emotion does not tell us our capability of what we can and cannot do. And emotion does not tell us whether we're on the right track. The only thing emotion tells us is what's happening in our brain, what we are thinking. This is so useful to know because, for example, 5 years ago when I was feeling discouraged that I couldn't do a push-up, all that discouragement was telling me is what I was thinking at the time. What I was thinking is that I was having a thought like this pain means I can't do this. That's all I was thinking. I was like because of my pain I can't do a push-up. And that thought, that activity in my brain was creating the discouragement, right? But what turned out to be true is that I was wrong about my pain. Even though I was in pain, I was safe. My joints were safe, and I could actually continue doing push-ups. I had to process the pain, allow the pain to be there, and tolerate it. But the pain was not actually a signal of my capability or what I could or could not do. And the thought I was having about the pain also was not an indicator of what I could or could not do. All of that was wrong. So how did I get so when I learned that, I'm like, "Oh, pain and emotion is not providing me information about my capability." Then I could tap into other information. This other information I looked into is like, am I really in danger, right? So then I really started to ask those questions and get more information about my disease, about my physical limitation. And once I got more information, it turns out I'm like, oh, I actually am okay. And this won't always be the case. You know, your situation might be different or whatever it might be, but the point is emotion doesn't tell us the truth. When we know that, then we can start asking questions that get us to the truth, that get us to information that can be more factual, that can actually help us make decisions that'll impact our life significantly. And so once I got more information and learned that I was safe and I could keep doing the push-up and I just have to deal with the pain, then I started to do more push-ups and I started to exercise more. And now 5 years later, I can bench press 200 pounds. And it's okay. All of that came because I learned this thing. I learned what emotions don't tell me. And I learned what they do tell me. The only thing emotion tells you is what's happening in your brain. What does that change for you? When you learn that, when now that you know that, if you actually believe that, what questions would you start asking yourself now? What information would you like to get? In addition to your emotion, right? So if emotion is not the source of information about our future, about our capability, about whether we're on the right track, then what information will help you determine what's going to come in the future or what you can or cannot do or whether you're on the right track? And you know what? When it also comes to the future, let me tell you this. Even if you get more information and facts about your current state, the future's still unknown, right? The future is the future. We just don't know. What we can control is right now and in the present. So that's kind of a tangent that I've also think I've talked about a bit more in other lives. But the point with this conversation today is just simply about what emotions do and don't tell us. And that's all I have for you for now. I would love to hear any thoughts, reactions, comments that you have. What will you do differently knowing that emotion is simply just telling you the thoughts that are running in your head? Emotion only tells you what neurons are firing in your brain. With that knowledge, what changes? What changes for you? I'd love to hear any of your thoughts. And with that, we'll wrap up for today. And I'll talk to you again next time. Thanks for tuning in. I love all of you so much.